This is lesson 8, and in this lesson I'm going to talk about units and model units and precision. There are some general concepts, and I'm trying to structure these lessons so that one could open any particular one and sort of, gather something from that without having to go through the previous one. So we left off lesson 7, so I'll have to modify that SketchUp model work in progress. And I'll make these files available to people, so the source files, in a handouts folder. Let me go ahead and create that now. So I'm going to create a new folder, AIDC FA19. So, and what I'll have here are some of the source files that you will need. Among them is this AutoCAD drawing. So you could take this AutoCAD drawing and work in SketchUp and build the entire model from it. And that's going to be what I'm going to talk about in this lesson. So we're going to open that drawing in AutoCAD. And we're going to annotate it a little to sort of understand it. When you import an AutoCAD drawing into SketchUp, it does not import text annotations. It's important to understand that because we're going to examine and annotate this drawing, this AutoCAD drawing, to understand something about it. Technically, this part of the drawing below, I'll select it in order to, that part of the drawing is a section that is cut from here. Let me just draw a line that is cut from here to there, looking toward in the direction of that arrow. So if I were to measure create a dimension, measure, sort of from the beginning of the window, this window opening, there's a 4-gang. Let's change the dimension style to something we can see. Repeat dimension. So the reason I'm doing this, so there's 12 feet across that those 4 windows. Let's also measure including the door frame and the 2 doors. We have 6 feet 4 inches in there, right? 6 feet of which are the 2 door leaves, which are 36 inches each, and then the additional 4 inches is the representation of the the door frame, which is somewhat abbreviated in this drawing, but that's roughly what we got. So presumably, if this drawing were perfectly correct, if I drew a line from where I measured that window where it begins, I'm going to F8 so that we draw orthographically. Right? I'm going to draw a line from the beginning of that window to where the other edge of that window set ends. It should coincide perfectly with what we see in the elevation. It doesn't. There is a difference of maybe 1/16 of an inch, 9/32 of an inch on this side, (5/16 of an inch on that side. So the drawing is defective somewhat. That doesn't mean that we can't use it. It just means that we're going to have to arrive at a strategy of how we're going to go ahead to model that. So we're going to make the inference that there are 4 windows together, each of which are 3 feet wide. So 4 times 3 make up the 12 feet. Then there are 2 doors that are 3 feet wide each, and the frame of that door is 2 inches on either side. So that's why do we make these inferences? Now I'm going to draw a line from the door edge, because we need to decide on how we're going to go about modeling the openings into which we're going to insert the doors and windows. So what else can we gather from here? In the section view, we're looking at things that we cannot ascertain in a plan view. So what are those things? In this case, it's going to be the height of the head of the window and door, which is the top of the window and door. So I'm going to measure from the floor to what appears to be the top of the window. It looks like we have 6/8 on this side. Let's measure the door. Let's repeat that. So if I go to there without the frame, we have 6/8, and that's reasonable. Right? There's a concept of units and precision that are handled differently in AutoCAD than in SketchUp. In AutoCAD, I can type the word units, and it brings me up this window that allows me to set precision settings in the model. You can see it's at 1/16 of an inch right now. So if I want to snap to, say, 1/2 inch increments or 1 inch increments, I could set that here. So sometimes it's in your interest to suppress that degree of precision because you're really not modeling to that level of precision. So I would make some notes here that window head height is 6/8, doors are 6/8 in height. You need to know what the sill height of the window is. You know the sill height of the door is 0. It would be foolish to be anything other than 0, right? So let's see if we can measure from the bottom of the window to the floor. It looks like that's 8 inches from the floor here. And that floor, remember, let's repeat the dimension. The thickness of that floor there is 12 inches, is a foot. Let's see if I can pull out the, well, I'm still in ortho mode. So that means that with respect to the 6-inch floor, the windowsill because the sills and window head heights are aligned, the dimension from the 6-inch floor to the sill of the window is unsurprisingly 1 foot 2 inches. So why is it 1 foot 2 inches? Because if it were a 12-inch, 12 inches, it would be to the underside. If it were 12 inches, it would be an 8-inch difference. Because this floor is only 6 inches, we add 6 inches to the 8 inches, and we get a sill height of 14 inches, or 1 foot 2 inches. Right? So the concept of window height, I'm going to go ahead and annotate. Window head. Six, 8. Okay. Change this text style so that we can see what we're doing. The window head height, modify head, window and door head height 6, 8 inches. Window sills are going to vary because it depends on the floor. So if I draw, it depends on the height of the floor. So if I draw a line from the top of this window across, you'll see that it intersects the top of those windows as well. But because the floor height beneath these windows is 6 inches, we have an additional 6 inches in the distance of the window sill from that floor. It's important to understand that. So the generalizations we've made here are that the window's overall height are 6 feet. Let's confirm that in this drawing, in this elevation. So we have 6 foot height of the window, 8 inches sill, and the width can't ascertain it from this drawing because it doesn't line up. It has there's a difference of fractions of an inch, but we can measure from here. If I snap to the center, the end point, right, each window's 3 feet. So let me repeat that. There does appear to be a midpoint of the frame in the CAD drawing itself, and that's the element that I'm snapping to. Okay. Let's go ahead and start SketchUp and talk about how that affects our strategy for modeling openings. So I'm going to minimize CAD, start using SketchUp. SketchUp is going to remember the last files I opened. So I'm going to start with this lesson 107. So if I go to isometric view, I have the model set to X-ray faces so that I can see through to the CAD drawing below. So we decided that the section drawing has some imperfections in the dimensions of the window and door frames if I'm measuring them in elevation. So, but we trust this sort of plan underlay here. So the way I'm going to go about doing this is I'm going to create an opening for the door that's going to include the door frame. So that is going to be 6 foot 4 inches. Remember, we measured this in the CAD drawing. 6 foot 4 inches wide. And what I'm going to do, because I want to create the openings on the walls, which are a group on their own layer, is to double click that group for editing and take some guides and pull them from the edges, right? Once you see that red axis display, feedback display, you can hold down the shift key and basically snap to the point where the opening begins. So that gives me a guide there. The next guide I can pull from that line. I'm holding the shift key, and you can see that if I snap to what appears to be the edge of the frame, I'm getting that 6 foot 4 inches that I need. The next opening is going to be the distance from there to the overall width of the windows that are 4 up in that drawing. So that next guide is going to be the 12 feet between the end of the door frame and the beginning of that set of windows. I'll need a horizontal edge that's going to be the top of floor. So I'm snapping to the height of the floor there. So that would be the bottom or the sill of my door system. Remember, we also need a sill height for the windows, and we determined that that was 8 inches. So I can drag in this direction and type in the number. Look at the control box on the bottom right, and enter. So that's the bottom of the windows. From that in this direction 6 feet. Oops. 6 feet is the height of the windows. And that's also the top of the door, right? So if I were to measure, if I were to put in a dimension, I'm not going to leave the dimensions there, but I measure from the top of floor to the top to the door head height. That's 6'8". I'm not talking about the frame now. And from the sill of the window to the top of the window is 6 feet. So, how do I create those openings? Well, let's uncheck X-ray mode so we can see what we're doing. The way you deal with those openings is you create a rectangle that snaps to the intersections of those guides, right? And that will create the rough opening that you want to pull through those walls by selecting the push-pull tool and gently pushing back until it says it reveals on face. And when you let go of that, it'll make that opening the correct height. I've made a mistake. I drew the bottom to the sill of the window, not to the sill of the door. So I have to push this down to that intersection. Or I could redraw it and draw correctly the height of the door frame. So that's our opening for the door. The window's going to be a little bit trickier because I want the intersection of that top right corner, and I want the intersection, and here it's actually meeting the edge of the door. So we're going to have a slightly problematic intersection there that we're going to have to deal with. That'll generate. Show you what happens if I push till it says on face. Well, actually that works. I thought it was going to leave that line in place. So there's the opening for that system in back. That includes 6 feet 4 inches for the door width, 6'8" height for the door system, and overall length of 12 feet for the width of the windows, so that's 4 times 3 windows that somehow we're going to put in there, and then the overall height for the windows of 6 feet. An easier opening to draw is going to be this one, because it's just 2 windows side by side. So I'm still editing the wall group. Let's see if I can draw guides for those 2 windows. I'm going to pull from the edge. Hold down the Shift key. There's the first vertical guide. And I can pull from that guide and snap to there. So there's a 6-foot window width. And remember, the inference that we made, the understanding we had from the CAD file, says the height to that sill is 1 feet 2 inches. So I need to pull from the bottom edge 1 foot 2, and then from that edge I go 6 feet. So these guides now that are here should generate the intersection. If I snap to those intersections, it should generate a 6 by 6 square, and that's, you can see in the control box on the bottom right, that's exactly what we have. Select that face and push it, oops, not the scale tool, and we need to push that through to on face behind the model. So if you can follow what I did with these two openings, you can do any other of the openings that we need in the project. Slightly trickier by where the porches are, but it's the same principle. Okay. So this concludes lesson 8. I may do a few more of these openings, but we'll talk about units. I did want to mention about model units in SketchUp. So preferences has a number of settings that control modeling, SketchUp settings, file locations, you know, general, whether you auto backup or not. But the units themselves are actually managed in what's called model info here. So here's where I can set the precision. And if I set the precision to snap to the nearest inch, you'll find an easier time drawing if you're actually measuring things explicitly. If you're snapping to, as I've done here, to the underlay that sits beneath the drawing, you don't have to worry about that, because you're just snapping to data, to geometry that's already drawn underneath the CAD drawing. So that this lesson's about a half hour, the beginning of which is a lot of housekeeping and explaining, but it's stuff you need to know.